Good morning. My name is Jennifer Thibodeau, and I am an attorney, speaker, author, host, and your facilitator for today's exciting conversation. I am here in my personal capacity as the owner of JMT Speaks and not on behalf of my employer, Thomson Reuters, so my views and opinions expressed today are my own. Having said that, we have an exciting conversation ahead. We're going to talk about expanding the definition of success. This is not going to be about abandoning our ambition as women, but exploring what leadership, fulfillment, and authenticity truly look like for each and every one of us. And I have a great panel to chat with today. Before I introduce them, one brief housekeeping matter. We have a multi-part discussion and we have reserved time at the end for questions and comments. So we ask that you kindly reserve your remarks and questions until then. So I'm going to briefly introduce these women, but we do have a QR code on the table and on the screen where you can read more about the panelists. Seated to my immediate left is Onome Adejemilua. Onome is a corporate partner at McCarter English, where she is the co-deputy chair of the corporate practice group. She's also an adjunct professor at Seton Hall Law and the president-elect of the Executive Women of New Jersey, the most powerful voice advocating for the advancement of professional women in the state. Seated next to Onome, I have Sarah Kernion. She's the founder of Inchstones and a leading voice for mothers and caregivers of children with profound non-speaking autism. She is the mother of 2 children with high support needs and the creator of the IEP Power Plan, a strategic framework that helps parents navigate special education systems. Seated next to Sarah, I have Dr. Peggy DeLong. She's known as the gratitude psychologist. She's a women's leadership and well-being expert, an international speaker, author, and coach. She is the founder of Your Happy Second Half and specializes in helping high-achieving women thrive in midlife and beyond. Lastly, Elaine Rocha. She is the Chief Executive Officer of the Madison Square Boys and Girls Club in New York, and the first woman to serve as CEO since its founding in 1884. Elaine is a proven leader with a distinguished career as a lawyer, corporate executive, and community advocate, with a journey that reflects her belief in the power of opportunity. Welcome. I want to kick things off by talking about the definition of success and how we can redefine it. Because as women, we often inherit these definitions before we consciously choose them. Might be based on title, productivity, recognition. But then we tend to hit this point where we realize that definition no longer serves us or reflects the life that we want to lead. So Elaine, I'd like to start with you. You've achieved success at the highest levels of corporate leadership and now in the nonprofit world. Looking back at your career, how was the definition of success that you were pursuing early on different than what's meaningful to you today?
Absolutely, great question. And thank you all for being here so early in the morning. Well, at first, I was a first generation kid, probably like so many folks in this room. So my parents didn't go to college, let alone law school. So success was defined by not what they wanted for me, but I was a bright kid, probably like many of you. And there were 3 career options at the time, a lawyer, doctor, or accountant. And I quickly ruled out accountancy, which is kind of funny because my last career was so finance driven. But it was lawyer or doctor. And the success really was that achievement or that which I shouldered. And you don't realize that when you're a kid, that you're shouldering perhaps others' definition of success and achievement and get the A+ and do all the things. So that really drove me and motivated me to get the law degree and then take those different opportunities and moving into the corporate sector. But as I grew, as we do through our career and we hone that expertise and that confidence, success was rather not the compensation adjustments or the titles. Those just come when you're good at what you do, frankly. It was, there was one distinct career pivot when I had become, I like to say, the queen. If you play chess, the queen is the most powerful piece on the chessboard. My last manager, the CEO of AIG, I became his chess piece on his chessboard. So if he had something that needed to be done, do it over here. Like for the last 5 years of my career there, I literally had 5 different jobs because he's like, go fix it, go professionalize it, go make it better. And I looked at myself and I'm like, this has been great. I've had incredible opportunities, but I want to be my own queen of my own chessboard. And that just comes with time sometimes. And I realized, you know what? I think I'm going to go do something else. So I tapped out and I started an insurtech startup. That's something else I had percolating in the background. But I knew I'd gathered all this knowledge, but success was no longer getting the pat on the head from the CEO, like you're amazing and SVP of whatever and managing this. It's really what fulfilled me and what did I take all those tools to bring me forward to what I want to do today, which is running a really cool nonprofit. So.
Well, I have to say, I think the takeaway is be the queen of your own chessboard. I think that might be one of the most important things we hear today, for sure. Yes, absolutely. Dr. Peggy, in your work, you have focused on how high-achieving women can get trapped in the cycle of achievement and external validation. So I'm sure I'm not alone in that feeling, and I know you're a high-achieving woman yourself. Did there come a point for you personally when you realized that you had to pivot in your own definition of success personally?
Absolutely. For so long, all of my validation was external. It was achieving the doctorate, being at the top of my class, so the praise that came with my job. I was a forensic psychologist in my former career, very rewarding, extremely gratifying, and for the protection of children. And it was really incredible to have caseworkers, attorneys, and judges really value my opinion and my insights on child protection matters. And that was all the external validation. And I did 4,000 child abuse evaluations. And I woke up one day and I thought, I cannot do this work anymore. But I thought, what in the world am I going to do now? This was 100% of my income. And I was making 3 times that of my husband. We had just purchased a vacation home. I had 3 young children, but I had to do something. So I read a wonderful book, The Success Principles by Jack Hanfield, and I did one simple exercise that completely transformed my life. And that was to take out a piece of paper and a pen and write down what brings me joy. That's the easy part. The hard part was to figure out a way to make money doing that. At the top of my list was speaking, teaching about gratitude. The second was making bracelets. The third was bringing women out in nature. And I'm happy to say that now I have 3 separate businesses for each of those 3 things on my list.
Bracelet. Let's see the bracelet. Okay.
I'm hired by corporations and universities to teach their members about the power of gratitude for long-term well-being. I have a mental health bracelet company, Love in a Bracelet, for coping with loss and mental health issues. And I bring women out in nature, teaching about the power of awe and nature for healing in New Jersey, and I run retreats in Vermont. And I could not have done it alone. My husband was extremely supportive to really stand by me through this pivot where we depended on my income. My children, they must have heard no to I want an ice cream 1,000 times if we had no cable for 3 years, and my mother. So there were tremendous sacrifices, but I'm so glad that I believed in myself and other people believed in me.
Thank you, Dr. Peggy. I'd like to turn it to Sarah now. Sarah, you have been very transparent in your work about your identity as a caregiver and a mother. I'd love to hear about how your definition of success has changed since becoming a mother and a caregiver to children with profound needs.
Thank you for that question, and thank you for having us today. I, like the other panelists here, thought that success was this visible, structured, linear, slow and steady, and that woman born in 1983, if you believed in something, it would happen. And I woke up on the Upper West Side and had 2 children with non-speaking autism on my bingo card, and that was not to be, right? So caregiving completely changed what my definition and structure of success was. Because when you have children that don't meet milestones, when you have children that are struggling with regulation, when you have children that are relying on you 24/7 for their needs, you begin to see that success is a lot smaller and a lot more internal. And so I believe that when I had children, they showed me what was possible for my own expansion of what success looked like. And it made it even smaller. So this morning, my son really struggles with getting dressed. But I noticed that this morning he put his hands through on his own through his shirt. And those are things that to the outside world are not deemed as successful. An 8-year-old boy should be doing that. But that took so much occupational therapy, so much coordinated effort as a mother, and honestly, true belief that that was success too. And so when I think about success and leadership, it's not just what's visible to everyone else, it's what's visible to yourself.
I think it's those tiny victories that we all can celebrate in our own way, in our own respective lives. Thank you for sharing that. I'd like to turn to Onome now. Onome, we've had the chance to chat over the past year about leadership and success a few times. And something I've always admired about you is your intentionality. You are very intentional in pursuing work, opportunities, and leadership positions that genuinely excite and interest you. And that can be tough when you have a career. And Elaine and I know this, we're supposed to check the boxes and follow a certain path. So how did you come to define success on your own terms?
That's a great question. Can you hear me?
I think
Is
so.
it on?
It's on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Jen. So success for me, and I always say success for everyone is different, right? Like so many women, I've had caregiving responsibilities that have honed and shaped my priorities. And so you and I have had this conversation very early into my career. Within a year and a half into practice, I had to care for a sick parent. And so that meant going in and hospitals for a year and driving long distances for, 5 and 6 years after that, and spending weekends doing that. And within that time frame, I started having kids of my own. And so I had to be very, very intentional because I had very limited time. And so, I found myself in a position where I had to, I wasn't able to do a lot of things that many of my peers were, attend various events and do all these things that are critical for advancing your career. So I had to be very intentional about the time that I spent away from my caregiving responsibilities and think about, the fact that I was sacrificing taking time away from those responsibilities. And so, I started thinking about the focus for me was tapping into things that I, had a genuine interest for, that I had a passion about. And so I had that as my North Star, and my guiding principle was to follow my interests and follow my passion. And so, the things that I got involved with were things that I was interested in. So I was already mentoring kids for, in this wonderful nonprofit organization. And so I continued doing that work, and that work morphed into a board role. And, I'm someone who loves the arts. I was raised by an artist. And so I love being around other artists. And so I wanted, when someone approached me about, being more involved with a local arts organization, I jumped at that opportunity and I joined the board. You know, Teaching is something that means a tremendous amount to me. I'm the daughter of an academic, and so I really wanted to sort of jump into these opportunities, and I was very intentional about them because I had very limited time. And so I would say, just leaning into opportunities that come about, that arise for you. If there are opportunities to do things outside your traditional circles, I would say lean into that and embrace that. And for me, my guiding principle has always been about being authentic to who I am and the things that I care about, and what my interests are.
When I hear you speak, it kind of strikes me that when you find something that lights you up, you're also lighting your path ahead and figuring out what makes sense to you. So I want to pivot the conversation a little bit to talk about leadership as a reflection of identity and life experience, because I think what we're really hearing is that redefining success happens through lived experience, and that experience then shapes how we lead. So, Sarah, for you, you are really this shining example of how leadership exists outside of traditional spaces. You have built a community, a platform, a podcast, and you have so much visibility and influence. As that visibility and influence has grown, how have you thought about your increasing responsibility around it and your success?
I love this question because I always say that being a forward facing mother on the front lines of profound disability caregiving is not to showcase my life, it's to be a mirror to other mothers that are doing the same invisible work. And leadership is often has so much cultural visibility and validity that is normally accompanying it. And the unseen, profoundly unseen daily choices through reps, through just being present with your child is what allowed me to redefine the leadership, not only in my house, but then share those externally with the mothers in my community. So it's not just nervous system regulation for myself. My nervous system regulation in my home allows my child to regulate more, which the overarching theme of that is that I manage chaos really well. Right? Find me a mother of children with autism. Guess what else they deal with really well? Uncertainty. And I think that the small reps of sitting in those chaotic moments where you have to maintain your own peace and calm when it's chaotic translates so beautifully into the professional world externally outside of the home. It revealed to me through my own lived experience that institutions have a real narrow view on what leadership could look like. Because when I speak to companies and talk about this, I'm not in corporate America anymore, but to embed my story in it allows those that are in it to see where the lessons that they learned in their home are translating in a million different ways as to why they're successful in the corporate world. And I think that if we can continue to talk about that and expand that, it'll only benefit women and mothers in business.
You talk about yourself as a mirror and embedding yourself in corporate life. You're also a window because we can see your story. So I think stories work in two ways like that. So thank you for sharing
Absolutely.
yours.
Thank you.
Dr. Peggy, you have spoken and written a lot about grief and loss and turning pain into purpose, which has been inspirational for me on my own health journey. I'm curious to hear about how those experiences have shaped not only your work, but also how you view leadership.
Well, it has come about in a quite unexpected way because even though I speak about gratitude, I was quite an ungrateful teen. I was a
We all
very,
were.
wasn't a very ungrateful young adult. It took tragedy in my life to discover the power of gratitude for myself. I was 26 years old and engaged to a wonderful man. Life was good until suddenly it wasn't. And what appeared to be literally overnight, he developed a lump on the side of his neck. And he was told without treatment he would die in 2 weeks. And even with treatment, his chance of survival 1 year later was 10 to 15% chance. Thankfully, he did achieve remission, and we had a wonderful summer of 1994. And then he relapsed, and the doctors said that there was nothing left that they could do for him and that he was going to die. And I sat by his side for 42 days and nights at the hospital. You talk about that peace in the chaos. Mm-hmm. That is when I discovered the power of gratitude. In all things, a simple cup of hazelnut coffee. My life was turned upside down. Each day, I didn't know if he'd be able to open his eyes and look at me. I didn't know if he'd be able to speak my name. I didn't know if he was going to die that day. But every day I could get myself a predictable cup of hazelnut coffee. And I would wrap my hands around that cup, and even through the styrofoam, I could feel the warmth. If you've ever smelled hazelnut coffee, it's very strong. It can really permeate an entire room, so it made his hospital room seem less sterile. I found so much comfort and gratitude in the predictability of that cup. And after he passed away, I moved back home to be with my parents. And I remember one conversation in particular with my father. My father was really great at processing emotions as a psychiatrist, but he was an even better father. And we were having this very serious conversation about grief, and he changed the subject a little bit and said, if I had it my way, I'm going to die on a chairlift. And I said, Dad, let's not even talk about it, but why a chairlift? And he said, well, that's where I feel most at peace, breathing in the cool mountain air. I feel most at peace on a chairlift. When my time comes, I want to die on a chairlift. 2 weeks later, my father learned that Okemo Mountain in Vermont was open, early season skiing before Thanksgiving. So he packed his bags that Sunday, and he would leave at 3 o'clock in the morning. So for the 6-hour drive, and he didn't want to wake up me and my mother, so he left us a love note on the kitchen counter, just letting us know how much he loved us and letting us know when he would be home. Only he never came home because he died on a chairlift. 2 weeks after my father told me that when his time came, that's how he wanted to die, he had a sudden heart attack while alone on a chairlift. So once again, it was gratitude that got me through the worst days of my life when my mother and I suddenly found ourselves two young widows living together. I was 26 and she was 52. So I know with certainty that gratitude heals. I know that gratitude is incredibly powerful on our worst days. So it has become my mission to teach other people, don't save gratitude for your good days. Gratitude is truly most powerful on your worst days. So that is how I live with authenticity to help other people to show what's possible.
Thank you, Dr. Peggy. And I have to say to everyone here, Dr. Peggy wrote a beautiful memoir. I can see clearly now. I had the pleasure of listening to her beautiful voice narrate it on Audible, 5 stars. So please check it out. Onome, as we've said, you have climbed the ladder at a law firm, you're president-elect at the ROI-NJ, you have done all of the things. What is something about leadership that maybe you didn't appreciate earlier in your career when you were climbing that ladder, but has become really important and forceful for you now?
That's a great question. I think the journey of getting to a point in your career where people look to you for guidance or think of you as a leader, it's definitely one where you faced many challenges along the way, right? And so I think learning the importance of resilience, and I think that's a word we've used today. Resilience is very critical, and I think, and learning the importance of when you're faced with challenges and when you have difficult moments, fighting through those moments and learning how to reframe those challenges as opportunities for growth, right? As growth opportunities. I think that's critical. I'd also say that never underestimate the importance, the power, the currency of authenticity. And that's a big word that we use today in leadership, because I think it's so important. People are missing opportunities to connect, right?
Yes.
And to make genuine connections, I think is so important. And I think it's where we find ourselves today, because we have so many digital touch points and we're making connections across and over screens. And it's a wonderful thing for convenience, but I also think there's it can be distant sometimes, and at times even transactional. And so I think people are craving opportunities to make genuine and deeper connections with people. So I think, those are really two words that come to mind when I think of leadership, is resilience and authenticity.
I think they go hand in hand. I know in my own experience, I don't think I could really embrace resilience until I was my authentic self.
Absolutely.
I do want to touch on authenticity, but first I want to go to Elaine, because you've shared with us how your definition of success has evolved and what's been meaningful for you as a leader, how have you handled really difficult leadership decisions in line with your definition of success? Maybe you have an example that you can share with us.
Yeah, well, it's a great question because again, as you grow in your career and you learn, you go from being a manager to a leader. They're completely different things, as you all know, right? I remember when I first went in-house and was running a legal department, my default was, okay, what are everyone's faults? What do they not do like me? How can I fix it? And how do I manage through that, right? And I totally, like, I reflect back on some of those early decisions and I was like, oh, God, that was like horrible and wrong. But you try the best, right? If you're just trying to, if you're success driven, meaning metrics driven, title driven, someone dangles the carrot and you're striving for that, you're like, okay, how do I get this team to achieve that, right? It's that constant achievement. But as you move up the ranks and people start looking to you for being a leader and what that means, it's how do I do things differently? How do I make sure I have the right people around the table? How do I look at what they're bringing to the problem solving? So it's like, it is some of the toughest leadership decisions or opportunities were for my own self-reflection, right? To say, hey, like, am I doing the right thing here? And making sure I do have those voices and empowering them. So even now, running a nonprofit, which is a totally different ballgame from me, right? I come from running 100 miles an hour. The biggest difference is brilliant people just a little bit slower. So I know I have to self-reflect and be like, all right, we don't have to get this done like yesterday. But respecting the brilliance around the table and knowing that I don't have all the answers. And I learned that years and years ago, but respecting what people bring to the table. I think that's half the difficult decision, is just reflecting on yourself. And, you know, opening the table and opening the dialogue in your own self to make sure you do welcome those voices. So I think just growing, and again, back to authenticity. I kind of am a chaos junkie, and I realized that as I looked on myself, because the more, you know, as a fixer, right, there's probably a lot of fixers in this room. When there's something to fix, we thrive. But when things are steady state, it's like snooze fest, right? So you just need that chaos. So yeah, it's a lot of those self-reflection. I probably need to talk to Dr. Peggy about some of the things that, you know, helped me grow as a leader, and some of those, frankly, those tougher internal discussions.
Well, you talk about self-reflection, but I think it's really emotional intelligence as well that you're showing as a leader, and, you know, empathy for the people that you're working with. So let's go back to Onome's word of authenticity. I want to pivot the discussion and really focus on authenticity in terms of boundaries and well-being. And I know when people hear the word authenticity, they're like, it's such a big word, it's a buzzword. And I think in my experience, I've learned that to be authentic really means that you have to set those boundaries. You got to let go of other people's expectations and make really difficult decisions. And it's about that intentional alignment. So Dr. Peggy, by the way, I was reading my notes last night. This question I have for you, I'm like, wow, we can do an entire panel on this. So sorry, this is going to be a big one. But what are some ways that high achieving women can define success that is sustainable and avoid burnout? Go.
Yes, the key is sustainable, because being a high achiever is a wonderful thing. Being ambitious is absolutely wonderful, but when you're not taking care of yourself, it absolutely will lead to burnout. So I have come up with a method. It's been tried and tested and research backed, and I call it the 3 Ps to combat the high achieving cycle. And that is connecting to the present, pleasure, and purpose. So in terms of the present, if you are working on a long-term goal, celebrate the wins every single day. Connect with your present life. Happiness is in our present life, not yesterday, not tomorrow, but today. So connect to your present life and what's right in front of you, and celebrate any win, big or small. The next P is for pleasure. Joy is so underrated. We need joy. It's not a luxury, it is a necessity. So you can infuse joy even into undesirable tasks. And even on your very busiest of days, to cultivate joy and create 5 minutes that you can gift to yourself. I remember when I was in graduate school and I was up at 6 a.m. and I was living in New Jersey, an hour and a half away from school, and I didn't get home until midnight. And I was a newlywed. I had about 5 minutes to connect with my husband, and we would treasure those it was only 5 minutes, but it was my joy for the day. And that was what got me through a really challenging time. So we really need joy in our lives. It's what gets us through the difficult times and helps the achievement be sustainable. The last P is for purpose. And high achievers tend to overcomplicate things. So we need to bring it down to simple, that the purpose does not need to be grand. So for the high achieving woman, it might be reframing for yourself and rewiring your brain what purpose looks like. And I like to follow the work of Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning in this regard. And in his wonderful book, he came up with 3 ways that we can cultivate meaning in really simple ways. The first is simply creating, making, and doing. We have opportunities for that every day. So you could be a painter and engage in a painting craft. You could decorate your child's or grandchild's bicycle. You could fix a leaky faucet. All of those are ways that we create, make, and do that really cultivate purpose in our lives. The next way is through human connection. That is a beautiful way, and actually the number one predictor of well-being is our human connections. So just know you're taking care of your mental health and you're cultivating purpose through your human connections. And the last way that he talks about is the way that we deal with inevitable suffering. We all have suffering in our lives at one point or another. Nobody gets through this life unscathed. So one way that we can cultivate meaning through our challenges is the attitude that we take through that inevitable suffering, for not just for ourselves, but how we can model that also for others. So just to repeat, those 3 P's are present, pleasure, and purpose.
I wrote them down. Thank you. We've worked together before, and every time we do, I learn something from you. And I see myself because I overcomplicate things and I feel like I've got the to-do list, checking things off, and I don't find that joy. And I need to get better at that. So thank you for that reminder. Elaine, turning to you, you've been in these really visible roles in the corporate world and now the nonprofit world, where I can imagine there's a lot of pressure to meet competing expectations. How have you stayed grounded in your personal values when navigating leadership at that level? And maybe you have an example you could share.
Yeah, for sure. Well, the higher you go up the chain, like the more noise there is, right? Everyone seems to have an opinion. It's funny now as CEO, I have 35 bosses, 35 board members. I'm like, ooh, that's an adjustment. Everyone has an opinion and they're wonderful, but just taking that in, or even in corporate America, one example, when I was promoted to my last role as global chief investment officer, accountable for a lot of assets. Everyone was, all these accolades, first woman CIO. And, my first rule of thumb is don't believe your own press, meaning like the titles don't matter. They really don't. And I think part of that is grounding from when I was a kid. My parents, first gen, blue collar. My mom, raised 5 kids, stay-at-home mom, which is, the greatest job in the world. And she instilled in these core values. It's like treat everybody the same, work hard, and stay humble, right? So those really stick with you. I think those core values really set me up for success, because you don't believe your headlines, you don't believe the title, because titles are really fleeting. And I learned that as I got bigger and bigger titles. I would tell my team, I said, this, the title is temporary. It's really the impact for your team members and how they respect you and what they learn from you that really makes the most difference. And I'm so proud when I have former colleagues that worked with me that were like, I'd work with you tomorrow if you have a role, that sort of thing. That for me is like the greatest joy, because it just shows that, that's the authenticity, right? That's the true leadership. That's, those are the moments that really matter the most.
Thank you for sharing that. I like what you said about titles being temporary.
Yeah.
That definitely resonates. Onome, for you, we've talked about the hats that you wear, and I'm curious where you are now. What brings you the most sense of fulfillment and alignment so you can be authentic as a leader?
Oh, man, another great question. So, that has evolved and changed over time, as you can imagine. Early on, it was about checking a million boxes and, doing, I was just driven to the point of just driving myself insane, right? Working long hours and, trying to get as many things done because I, didn't have a ton of time. And so, that has definitely and radically shifted now because I have 2 small kids. And so for me, and, it could be anything for, anyone else, depending on your circumstances. But where I am in my life right now is, I'm taking care of two small kids while doing everything else that I'm doing. And so for me, the picture of fulfillment is, you know, getting to spend quality time with them. And so that means, you know, driving all across New Jersey, taking them to soccer games and you know, doing all the things that bring them joy on the weekends, and then carving out time for myself, right? And it's not a lot of time, right? It's minutes here and there if you're able to, an hour or maybe. But it's doing the things that replenish me, because I feel, and we all feel, we all have a million things to do and a million things on our plates, and you feel depleted a lot of times, right? And so it's getting to do the things that I feel recharge me, rejuvenate me, you know, bring me into a headspace where I feel grateful, I feel gratitude, and you know, I'm ready for facing all of the different things that I have to face. So it's changed over time, and it continues to evolve, and I'm sure it'll continue changing, you know, as my circumstances change. So I would say just the things that bring you joy, and we've used that word today, I think are just so important.
Yeah, we all need to have more fun. And I think then we will be those authentic leaders once we connect with the purpose and joy. Sarah, turning to you in your work, you've been very transparent about the emotional and mental costs of caregiving. What does sustainable leadership look like when responsibilities are constant and deeply personal?
Yeah, I think that we have to first and foremost remember that none of us are robots, right? We are orienting ourselves today in a different manner than we were yesterday and 10 years ago and as a child. And profound autism caregiving for me, nothing changed my reality to that I'm not a robot, and that adrenaline and performance and outcomes and self erasure would eventually be a major detriment to my strength and success as a leader of my house and externally. And that understanding allowed me to realize that, like everyone else here has shared, the smallest moments that you can take to support yourself, it doesn't need to be an entire weekend. It doesn't need to be a full day at the spa. I generally tend to get up at the crack of dawn because it's the only time that I have quietly. And I watercolor and have coffee for about 10 minutes alone. And what that does to set my day up for such success allows that self erasure to not overtake the entirety of the day. And when respite and help and support is baked in to the boundaries of your caregiving, you end up elevating your sense of strength and sustainability in leadership. The communities that I sit in are in a lot of deep pain and sit in a lot of grief over what the cost on their body is. Because we all know of a phrase that is amplified a lot these days. So the body does keep score, right?
It's great.
You cannot outrun your nervous system. I wish I could, right? I wish I could outrun the adrenaline pumping through my body, the cortisol, when I realize my son maybe has escaped the backyard because I might not have double checked the gate. And it doesn't make the caregiving load wrong. It just means I have to build in structures to allow for the compensation of what that does to me as a mother to come back to a more homeostatic point consistently. And the more in which women and mothers share this from a, you know, it's a respective point of view. It doesn't have to be the intensity of special need parenting, but if you share more vulnerably and realize that I too can harness and take back some of my own self-care on a smaller scale, what that gives to you and the repetitions of that allow for the sustainability.
There is really such strength in vulnerability and being willing to share your story. Like I said, you are both a mirror and a window. ROI did a program in the fall on the capacity to care, and some of the panelists are here. And what you said was the point. It's not about that spa day. It is about those 10 minutes. Do you want to watercolor? Do you want to touch grass in the morning, as the kids say? Whatever it is, I feel like that is the message that we're often missing. So thank you for that reminder. I'd like to start closing out our panel with really intentional advice and takeaways. We've been doing that already. But particularly for, the women in the room who might be questioning whether they're in intentional alignment or whether their definition of success is working for them anymore. So Onome, for the younger women in the room, what's one thing about success that you wish you had learned earlier?
Another big question. So I would say, expect your definition of success to change at various stages of your life, right? And so, early on, I think you should be focused on developing and honing your craft in whatever field of practice you're in. I as a transactional lawyer, very early on in my career, I was focused on, because I found many of the deals that I was working on very complex. I was focused on making sure that I identified discrete tasks and mastered those tasks, really wrapped my arms around them so that I had a deeper understanding of the underlying issues and developed an ability to spot them early on so that I, was thinking ahead and before they got into, to be bigger problems. And so, and of course that progressed as, I got more senior. I was thinking more, I'd mastered all these different tasks and I was thinking more about big picture, right? So it was more big picture analysis. How does everything fit together? And that was very important at that stage. And now for me, it's more about the relationships, right? It's more about the relationships that I have with my colleagues, with my clients, and how I'm growing and developing those relationships. And so I would say, early on, expect your definition to change over time. Be open to how that change comes about. And expect your relationship with it to change as well. So I would say be open, give yourself grace, but early on, hone your craft and be focused on really, really understanding what it is you're working on and what it is you're doing.
I love what you said about allowing your relationship with success to change. I think that's a really great finer point because for me, 10 plus years ago, success would have been, I billed 9 hours today. That currently sounds horrible. I don't do that anymore. Today's success will be being here, doing half a day's worth of work and going to youth sports. We said all over the state of New Jersey tonight. So I never would have allowed that into my life earlier. So I'm glad you said that. Sarah, what is one thing that organizations or leaders can do differently to create environments where everyone can lead authentically, particularly those who are dealing with unseen and these invisible challenges?
I think there's many layers to this, but number one being having the environment be shaped by the ability to be vulnerable. I oftentimes say that I never in a million years would have thought or chosen to have children that require 24/7 care, likely for the rest of their lives. Yet in sharing that as I do my work, even just as a speaker to companies, the radical truth and reality of that is not separated or divorced from my work. And because of my children and because of their needs, I have grown the skill set of such faithful presence. Exactly what you're saying about what you today find as successful. My children never grew out of that need to be taken care of, right? And so women and mothers, we have this thought that is conditioned and is primal, that your children are babies and they need very little. And at some point around the age of 2, they start talking and verbalizing and testing the nest. My children never did that. And it's not that they aren't doing it, it's just on a much different trajectory. But what it's forced me to do is have such faithful presence to the moment And by sharing my day to day with any, work that I'm doing with a coordinator or, an event planner, it allows my presence to be so powerful in the moment. And I think that having those spaces for you to share what's going on at home, what's going on in your life. I know I've had conversations before we joined on stage about the sandwich generation of caregiving right now. So how many of you right now are in the sandwich generation taking care of kids and parents? Yeah, I mean, it's a decent amount of us, and that does give you something. And to quote Dr. Peggy, it's not just heavy and grief. It's also a gift of deep presence. And I think by being able to have environments to share that, you also expand your potential at work.
Thank you. And I will say that ROI did do a panel last year on the sandwich generation.
Yeah.
So it seems like our topics have been timely. Dr. Peggy, I know you spoke about this a little bit before and I give you that big loaded question, but if there is one mindset shift that women can make today, something very simple to do to reconnect with that authentic self, with joy and purpose like you've been discussing, what is it?
Well, I think you can guess that it is gratitude.
I thought so.
And one of the reasons gratitude is so powerful is because it counteracts our brain's negativity bias, the human condition. Unfortunately, our brain tends to hang on to and linger and remember the negative. You can leave a meeting with 10 compliments and 1 criticism, and you're going to go home remembering the criticism. That's not your fault. That is your brain's fault. And it's called negativity bias, that we simply put more weight and remember the negative. It takes our brain about 1 second to pay attention to, encode, and store a negative experience. It takes 12 seconds for our brain to do the same with the positive. So we need to be intentional about connecting to the positive. So I have a simple method that I teach that it's very simple. It's just called notice, appreciate, feel, linger. And it only takes 30 seconds of your day. 3 times a day, spend 12 seconds processing something good. So the first is notice something good. The second is appreciate. Don't just notice it, but appreciate the good. The next is to feel. So it's not a cognitive exercise, it's a feeling exercise. And the next is linger. Your brain needs 12 seconds in that positive experience to really focus on it. Notice, appreciate, feel, linger, and it will combat a negativity bias and make you a more positive thinker.
Thank you for that tool, because we say, oh, be grateful, but it's like, but how? How do I do it? I want to be, right? So thank you for the framework in which we can do this today. Elaine, for you, there are, I'm sure, women in the room who are thinking about a pivot or doing something else to find that authentic alignment. As someone who's made a change, what advice would you give to that woman so they can make that leap courageously and thoughtfully?
Yeah, great question. And as Onome said, early on in your career, you're honing your skills, right? You're building, the analogy, the tools in the toolbox, right? So you know what you're good at and what you like to do at this point in your career. Really hone into that. So for me, I like to, I'm a fixer. I like to fix things, problem solve, but I also like to give back. So in addition to my corporate career, I've always served nonprofits in terms of the board space. So when the Boys and Girls Club came to find me, they literally hunted me on LinkedIn. I was like, I wasn't quite expecting that, but I thought this is quite interesting, right? It marries this particular Madison Square was going through a lot of transformation. They want to grow, innovate, and go through all the things. So I was like, well, that sort of feeds my transformation need, my need to sort of fix and contribute. And then also, it was mission driven, right? We're serving kids and families. So what better way? So at some point in your career, you know the things that do bring you joy and hopefully make you grateful for what you do and sort of fill you up. So it just was a perfect balance. So I think, as you're thinking about, whether you're a lawyer, billing time right now and you want to maybe instead of, build time, build a business, think about, what you like to do. And again, I give a shout out to my law degree, and Stephanie heard me talk about this yesterday, but the through line for me was the the problem solving and the research and analysis, and that through line served me from practicing attorney to in-house attorney to investments professional to now CEO. So you know those tools and those skills that you've developed, just rely on them. Trust yourself, really. That's the biggest takeaway. Really trust what you have and take the leap.
I love that. Trust yourself. So before we close and open this up for questions, I'd like to ask each panelist in a little bit of a lightning round to just share one word or phrase that is your definition of success. And Elaine, I'm going to start with you. I don't know if it's queen of your own chessboard, but
Like queen of your own chessboard, opening doors for others.
Okay, Dr. Peggy.
Gratitude heals.
Sarah.
Inchstones over milestones every day.
Name of your company.
I would say evolution. I do believe that success is not one thing. It's, it's a disservice to think that you'll be successful if you do this, right? That your definition changes over time. It gets redefined, it gets refined. And evolution.
Yeah, well, success is not static, right? I think that's my takeaway for today. It evolves for us, it evolves with us, and that is how we can be authentic leaders that have impact. So with that, I would love to open this up now to what we hope is robust questions. Oh, we've got a question already. We do have microphones and also comments if you have a reaction or something you'd like to share. And it looks like Barbara Kaufman is going to kick us off. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you. This is wonderful. I really enjoyed it. And thank you to all the panelists. I am curious for each of you, including Jennifer, what is one thing that you wish you could fit into your schedule, but because you're all such programmed, busy people, you're unable to get in, and you hope sometime in the future you could do?
All right, I'm going to start. Playing tennis. I played tennis growing up, and I recently committed to 4 clinics. I have my 3rd one this week, and I really found it's reconnected me with joy, but I don't know when it's ever going to happen aside from these 4 one-hour clinics. So that comes to mind.
That's a great one. And I love tennis too, so.
We'll play sometime in the next 5 years.
Exactly.
How old are your boys?
About the same.
Yeah, I thought so.
I miss alone time, right? I just miss one thing I used to love doing is going to coffee and tea shops, and Barbara and I have done this a few times. And just taking a book with me and spending an entire day doing that, just reading and, meeting people and, just having that quiet time to myself. So I can't wait for that.
Can we do that after we play tennis? Well, can I come? Is that okay?
Having like one weekend of complete mindless travel where I have no agenda and I just go to a drivable New Jersey town or upstate and just wander. I think there is something that is luxurious, which sounds almost the opposite. How luxurious is mindless wandering? Right? Like just noticing things and walking into a coffee shop and talking to someone, that is a life luxury that I think about every single day.
Well, honestly, I'm living it. I really do get to do what I want to do every day. So, and I came up with a new word. I'm not retired. I am free tired.
Love it.
Because I will never retire. I love what I do. I have location freedom and time freedom. I have a very purposeful work of helping women do the same. So I really truly get to do what I want to do every day. And so that's my word, free tire. And I hope everybody is able to at some point achieve that as well.
You're an inspiration.
So jealous. And so many things. But the one that comes to mind, it reminds me, have you ever been to Majorca? Right, Island off of, yeah, it's beautiful. I went a couple years ago and I signed up for a private art lesson for 3 hours with a private artist. So I was so excited. I love art, I love painting, I love drawing, but I haven't done it in like a million years. And it's like a half hour before the class starts, and I'm like, 3 hours with a private artist. I'm like, how is this going to go? I'd be so terrible. It was like the greatest 3 hours of my life. Because again, it was no judgment. He was such a great instructor. I learned how to like like those plants out there, those are actually incredibly difficult to paint because the shape, oh my goodness. So, but it was so fun, and I would love to just be able to paint and draw, and I leave zero time for that, admittedly.
That was a really good question. Thank you, Barbara. Who else? Yes, I see a hand. Tom's coming with a microphone.
First, I just want to say thank you for the acknowledgement, Sally. This was amazing. But all four of you are so inspirational. I feel like hearing your stories have really given me more hope to push my work and really believe in myself. And I think that if I had one question and kind of relating to the 26-year-old of you, something very similar that I went through with my own daughter and pulling her through that darkness, what advice would you even give to the children? Because I feel like our conventional way of we used to make it to leadership is gone. And I see it at, I'm corporate, but then I turn into like Hannah Montana with a wand. But what do we tell those kids that can't keep up with the environment we're currently in because it's not suited for them? It's not suited to support the women the way we kind of thought how we would be forward thinking. So for kids, I think, how do we tackle those women and men? Because I think it's the little boys and little girls that turn it to you all. So what advice could we do for that?
My suggestion is to find a mentor, somebody who you respect, whose path you admire, and ask for their time. I find I always sought out advice and inspiration from people, sometimes in books, sometimes real people. But now I think women love to give back that way. So being able to be a role model for somebody younger is a wonderful gift. So I would suggest finding a mentor and hang on to hope. Sometimes when everything feels so hopeless, sometimes hope is all we have left. And we really need to hold on to hope for better days ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I think I saw a hand in the back. Oh, hi, Joetta. Oh, we got two competing hands. Is that Donna? Can't see it. Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Good.
I didn't see you.
That's okay.
I have a question. Hi, thank you for your authentic answers and being vulnerable with your responses. I have a question. Being a leader, are you a leader because you believe you're a leader, or are you responding to the way people think about you, and why to either one? If you are a leader because you believe, or are you a leader because people say you are a leader?
I firmly believe that life happens for us, not to us. And I think that the capacity for leadership is within every single one of us. And I talk a lot in my own community and in my keynotes about this real feminine intuition. And I think that when we tap into that and we really listen to that alongside what is evolving and expanding in our life and the opportunities that are in front of us, I think we have the power to lead every single day more than we ever give ourselves credit for. And I think that it comes down to this deep inner knowing. I really do.
And to add to that, I think there are a lot of times as women that people pick us, right, before we believe that we should be in those positions, right? And so I think it's powerful to recognize that, yes, people see you as someone who can lead, as someone who can guide, and learning to lean into that is so important. And it may take time, it may take time for you to embrace that. But I just think it's important as women to raise our hands as well, right?
Yeah, if I could just add to that, I think there's leadership in terms of that title, right? Name you the CEO, so everyone has no choice but to follow what you say. But that doesn't make you a leader, right? I mean, I'll make it a quick story. When I was 17 years old, I was president of my high school class, and this is when I learned leadership. Star wrestler, kicked off the wrestling team. What does that have to do with me? Absolutely nothing. I had my college scholarship in the books. I was ready to graduate, but people kept coming up to me because I was senior class president. So I needed to do something. So 17-year-old Elaine, what do? I'm like, I guess this title means I actually have to do something, but I did something. This was 1990. Typed up a letter to the Board of Education and said, you need to reinstate him. He never got kicked off. He got kicked off because he was defending his sister's honor. Somebody said something about her. And he gave, we're from New Jersey. What do you expect? But be careful what you do. I sent this letter, typewriter. I mailed it. They called the house phone because it's 1990. And my mom's like, the superintendent wants you to go to the Board of Education and explain this letter that you wrote. And I was like, my mom's, she's not, now she's a 91-year-old first-gen Italian woman. So that just paints the picture right there. She's like, what did you do? And I said, it was just wrong. People were coming up to me because of my title. But then I talked to Michael and I said, what happened? I'm like, well, that's just not right. Everybody deserves a second chance. So I go, we're, Board of Ed's on this really high dais. They're looking at us. And I just made my case. I wish I still had a copy of this letter. I would die to read it. But it actually solidified my path to law school because I learned how to use my voice. But for me, that was my first leadership lesson. The title pushed me there, right? Because people were looking to me, but standing up for somebody else when you get zero skin in the game, right? I was, battling for valedictorian, ready for graduation, no reason to get involved, but that's leadership. And so that really sort of stuck with me as I managed people or moved up the ranks. It's really, what are you doing for others? Not that they just have to follow you, but they actually want to, and they're inspired or learn something from you. So that's like my first lesson about leadership.
I'm so glad you shared that. There's nothing about that story that surprises me, by the way. You as like valedictorian, all the class president, standing up for someone. Thank you for sharing that. Donna, I think you had a question.
Yes. Thank you. Two things. So kind of back to the mentorship, I wanted to share that 100 years ago, I was a speaker at Sally's Executive Women at Sobel. And because I didn't have anyone to watch her, I brought my granddaughter to the planning meeting. Sally pulled her right into the process, and my granddaughter became part of the process of planning for that event. And then Sally insisted that she come to the event, and then Sally insisted on making her introduce herself in front of 150 people. So I just can't tell you the lasting impact that had. And so I don't think it's partly mentorship, and it's including our children in what we're doing so they can really see what it's about. So thank you, Sally. But my real question is, you all have done an amazing job of inspiring us this morning. I'm curious, what inspires you?
I sit in a space where very few women and mothers and caregivers of disabled children are able to use their voice because of the compounding nature of the job. And there are a few women, Honey Rinicelli being one of them, Jill Escher. They have children that are in their 20s and 30s, and 20 years ago were writing about this experience online on, when Tumblr was going on, and Instagram was just this little thing, and Facebook groups were there. When I think about how few women are out there doing this work, I have such a deep knowing that I have to do this because of how few are able to. And I think that those are the inspiration points, because 20 years ago, when Honey Rinicelli had twins and, Vincent was not speaking, she didn't have the resources that we have available now. And so by hearing her story, I think I have to use what I am able to do to serve my community better.
I guess I'll go. Well, I run a youth organization, right? So every day I'm inspired. But last night we had an event. It's called our Youth of the Year event. And when you have your seniors equivalent in high school, and they get up on stage in front of 400 people, they share their story. And they, our kids have very challenging lives. And when they share their background and what they're achieving, it makes like every day worth it. It's just like, okay, who do I have to meet today? Who do I have to shake it down for a few more pennies for our kids? So that is daily inspiration. But also being in events like this, quite frankly, and seeing all these incredible women together is really inspiring for me personally. So I think women are the best. So.
I'm just going to add to that. I feel like storytelling inspires me, hearing the experiences that everyone here has shared, particularly from other women. We talked about, the mirror, the window. I think for me, that really creates such genuine connection. And I feel inspired when I hear people put themselves out there.
I'm going to add something really quick about who inspires you, because I think every one of us in this room will know this. We are innately we are built to tend and befriend, right? We've heard that concept a lot as women. And we actually there's research that shows you get like an oxytocin hit in your body when you connect with other women. So know that mothers and caregivers in the workplace is not wrong. It's how you were built. And it's how it will continue to be a force and like that through line of your work and inspire you daily.
Thank you for that. Kara, did you have a question? Yeah, I think we have time for one or two more.
Thank you, Jen. You are the most amazing moderator ever. And thank you, everybody. Incredibly inspiring, and also very validating for the work that I'm doing with law school students. And I heard so much about presence. One of my big things is joy and joy management and rest. I think rest combines with joy. Presence and rest and time for ourselves and the boundaries are so important. I was just curious how we can take that narrative in a more systemic way and what you think that we can all do, because I think when we're in these rooms, it's amazing and it's inspiring. And then there's the culture that many of us are in, especially the law, where it's a badge of honor to grind culture and to do all the things. And even at leadership conferences and awards, it's, the litany of what they've done. And then I really wish people would stop saying, when does she ever sleep? So it's so inspiring. I just wonder from a systemic point, maybe, do you have any ideas or, I don't know, suggestions on how we can work on the culture? Because it's the individual work, right? And then also trying to help change that too. So thank you for all that you're doing.
Thank you for that question. It's a great question. As someone who's in that grind culture, I think especially as women, we need to recognize and, give a little space to, recognize and give space to other women who need some time, right? Because I remember being someone in my junior years and my early years who needed some extra time, right? And so I think being able to communicate with your team that you need that time, I think is critical. The great thing was I had established myself as someone who had a strong work ethic and, was willing to put in the hours to get the work done. And so when I did need that time, I had to have a meeting with the people that I worked with. And I said, listen, I have small kids, I have all these things that I'm doing. And so I asked that for a little grace. And I think for us as women in leadership positions, we should recognize when other women who are working with us and other people who are working with us need some extra time and need a little bit of space and opportunity, but recognizing that they should and still need to get the work done, but being able to identify that early and have conversations around that.
I think modeling that behavior, Kara, like for example, in corporate America, it was rise and grind, like 6 a.m. I'd be on the 6 a.m. ferry to New York and then the 10 p.m. home and the 6 a.m. I mean, I had to buy an apartment because I just worked all the time. But, and there were no boundaries at all. So I found myself modeling that behavior, like literally setting up 6 a.m. conference calls on a Saturday. I'm not even joking. And people just expected it. And I'm like, do I really need to be doing this? Right. So when you just realize that, you're like, you have to model the boundaries. Again, once you become senior, you have those titles, you actually have the power. That's what I meant. Like titles are not long lasting and they don't matter, but it's what you do with them when you can, right? So I was like, yeah, this is like dumb. What are you doing 6 a.m.? And even in this new role, right? I send an email on a weekend. I'm like, nobody responds till Monday. My partner was like, leave them alone. And I'm like, yeah. She's like, do the time send at like 8 a.m. on Monday so you don't seem like a jerk. I'm like, good advice, right? So you just constantly remind yourself, like, this doesn't need to be done on a Saturday. So again, when you're in those positions of power, leadership, whatever title you're holding, that's how you change the system. More of us need to be in the positions of power, quite frankly. And once we're there, you just have to model the behavior that you want to see. It doesn't mean we're any less strong, powerful, or badass. It just means, we respect people's boundaries, right? So it's a constant.
Thank you. I think we have time for one last question. Yep. Oh, sure. I'm sorry. I didn't see.
Good morning. Sarah, you've talked about this, but I was wondering about the other women, and you can certainly opine again, but there's two questions that I ask myself kind of throughout my career, and one is, if not now, when, and if not me, who? So what was the moment in your careers where you asked yourself those questions and you began a new path or part of your journey?
Well, for me, it was a feeling of dread. When I woke up with dread instead of looking forward to my workday and changing lives, I knew I needed to pivot. And thankfully, it coincided with a family vacation where we really weren't doing much. We were at our vacation home and didn't have any plans. So I spent that entire week reinventing myself and reading all the books that I could, see who could help me. Networking is so important, really, not just for our mental health, but connections with people. So that was so important to me, to connect with everybody that I knew and let them know that I was pivoting and I needed help. So asking for help can be really difficult for high achievers. So that was something that I learned, that I needed to ask for help. I could not make that pivot on my own, but it was really a sense of dread that informed me that I needed to make a change.
Can I just tag onto that very quickly? For me, I used to be a partner at a law firm. It was all I ever wanted to do. But I think for me, I woke up one day and was like, just because I'm good at this doesn't mean I have to do it anymore. It doesn't light me up. And I think that realization kind of had things align for me personally. So I don't know if that helps anyone here. Was there one more?
Hi there. I'm also an attorney. My name is Jackie Vogt, and I'm a partner at Madison Barrett, and I'm the chair of our Women's Initiative, and we have a really nice group of our women here today. Following up on your question, one of the things that we come up against is the attitude of the men in our law firm and in the world. Why do women need women's initiative groups? Why is it important for women to network together, to seek support from each other, to have these events? And I'd love some input from everyone in this room about how to combat that attitude.
So
That's part two.
I mean, I it's tough, right? Especially when you're a lawyer, and we have a bunch of attorneys in here. We are constantly in rooms where very few people look like us, right? There are very few women, especially as you get to the higher levels. So making the case for why and the value of female leadership is, I'm not sure if there's how to go about doing that other than to be a representative of someone who, someone who is incredibly good at what they're doing, right? And then finding ways of building community around that with other women like you do through your women's initiative. You know, I'm at the stage where I don't know that I have to make the case anymore. I just have to build, build and build with other people around me that I want to be around, right? And so, unfortunately, there are still places where you feel like you have to make that case, but I think, I don't know that I have a good answer other than to say that, just continuing to be a good representative of someone who is competent, capable, and skilled, I think will help. Yeah.
I've written about this topic, and there's a few things going on. One, men in corporate leadership are not running away from being a man, and women in corporate leadership are not running away from being a woman. And a comment or a phrase I said before was tend and befriend. Well, men are protect and provide. And that is one bucket. The second bucket is the research that I do and what I write about is that combat soldiers that return from war generally have PTSD. And a lot of the government and the systems that have been set up for them are community support. Look at decades ago, the VFWs, when men came home from war, that was where the men gathered, and it created such peace in their own little networks, right? Translating that from mothers of children with high needs had that same kind of dysregulation because of the compounding nature and the stress of frontline soldiers. But women naturally gravitate towards healing circles. And the third thing is that the third space decades ago was this. This was what we did decades ago. The third space now is online. So unfortunately, I think what I'm hearing you say is that why can't you just get that via a group online? Why can't you just have a text group? Because we're pulling away from something that's really innate to do. And we should be looking to the ways in which actually the country has been the system of our government is actually set up for men to heal. It should be the same for women.
It's about community, right?
And my suggestion as a scientist would be to rely on the data. And the data shows us that having a sense of belonging is so important for our well-being, and then our well-being translates to us being happy in the workplace. So sometimes people need convincing with the data.
Thank you.
I love that question. It's so arrogant of the men. Like, why do you need a woman's group? Like, why do you play golf every Wednesday afternoon with every male in the firm? Okay, we can get an answer from that. But all kidding aside, it is the data. More to the fact, from my perspective, like the access, the compensation, the women in the roles. Like, why was I the first woman global CIO in a 200-year-old company history? Why am I the first woman CEO in a company that's 142 years old? It's like outrageous. And that's why we need these groups, to highlight the incredible women that we know, right? I've had some wonderful male allies as well who are like, I love working with women. They're better, they're smarter, they're harder working. And they like, he was a unicorn, but he recognized that. And so when you find that person, bring them along and just, introduce them to your outstanding colleagues so they see, the networks is to foster that and build that and highlight what they could bring to the table. So really it's just informing them and, just say, keep playing golf. And I love golf, by the way, I'm just joking, but like that's their equivalent of women's networking. Let's be honest. So, I'll just say about that.
And one more thing to add to that, and I think that's a great point, is and some of the work that we do at the Executive Women of New Jersey, EWNJ, is highlight the value and the importance of women in leadership. And we do that in a number of ways. One way is we actually commission and track the women in these senior leadership positions and make the case for the importance of having women at the seat at the table. So it is critical. It's so important. And I think highlighting and spotlighting the issue is one really critical way to make that case.
I could probably think of no better way to end. So I really want to thank this remarkable group of women for chatting with us today. And thank you all for being here. And thank you to ROI and New Jersey for making space. Thank you.